All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardinellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody. I can't do it as cool as you, man. Anyway, it's official. Everybody's heard the news about, I'm not even a Bosch pronunciation of the name, but the Iranian general that was toasted and roasted via airstrike in Iraq. And one Andrew Yang has opined on the subject, and there's conflicting views on his opinion. So, Cody, tell us what's going on.
Well, I guess really quickly recap just a little bit is that, yes, one of the top Iranian military commanders was killed in a U.S. airstrike in Baghdad. I got
the last name, Soleimani. I got that, but how do you say that first name?
I don't know, but I really don't. I'm you know me. Never ask me how to pronounce the names. I am the worst at names. But
yeah.
But anyway, this obviously prompted a lot of discussion about about a potential war with Iran, which who knows what'll happen. However, this also led to a little bit of discussion with Andrew Yang on Twitter. I'm going to go through that about Andrew Yang, by the way, doing what every good candidate, any good marketer should do. If you're trying to sell something, what is it like?
Never
pivot.
let a crisis go to waste.
Just pivot into it. So anyway, here we go. So Andrew Yang says the war with Iran is the last thing we need, and it's not the will of the American people. We should be acting to de-escalate tensions and protect our people in the region. Sure, no problem with that. I have signed a pledge to end the forever wars. We've been in a constant state of armed conflict for 19 years at a disastrous cost to both our people and our resources. This must end. I agree. I'm done with these wars in the Middle East. And this is interesting too. So he goes, our Constitution says that it is the power of Congress to declare war. I would repeal the AUMF and restore the historical balance between Congress and the executive branch concerning military action. The priority now is to be protecting our embassies, bases, and personnel in the region and hardening our defenses. We must ensure that Americans do not pay a terrible price for this attack. And then he just gets in the end here. This decision highlights the need to get Donald Trump out of office. Yada, 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 diplomacy instead of violence. Got it. Well, it's just that's not new. But but what I want to get into is here. Him getting back and talking about the idea of repealing the AUMF and restoring the historical branch balance between Congress and the executive branch. So what that is exactly, I did a little bit of digging into it because I kind of knew what it was, but that's a good summary. Some GovTrack. So this is the actual Senate summary or the actual, the Congressional Research Service's summary. So.
Well, the AUMF is a response to the September 11th attacks that basically makes it so that the president can drone strike anyone in the world as long as he declares them first a terrorist. Sure. And that was a huge problem that everybody had with the Patriot Act because what's a terrorist? Like, I mean, they're calling Catholic nuns who don't want to give, babies to gay couples and adoption clinics terrorists now. You know, it's that classic free speech argument about whether it's objective or subjective. And so I don't like it, actually, that a terrorist can be called anything. That's actually a problem that I agree with the left on at that time was a huge flaw in the Patriot Act because you can call your own citizens terrorists on a whim and then all of a sudden the president can drone strike them. You know, it's kind of freaky to me.
Well, actually, it's worse than that, which is why I want to kind of get into a little bit.
Okay.
Because you don't have to actually say that there's terrorists there. They actually say, here's the thing. It authorizes the president to use all necessary and appropriate force against those nations, organizations, or persons he or she determines planned, authorized, committed, or aided the terror attacks that occurred September 11th, or harbored such organizations or persons in order to prevent any future acts of international terrorism against the United States. You'll notice that September 11th, 2001 happened 18 years ago. However, we can still say you are indeed harboring men who helped, men or women, who helped form these attacks. But essentially, here's the thing though, right? Just, playing devil's advocate here. There's also the idea of if something like 9/11 happens, is Congress going to declare war on the Taliban? What process do we have in place for Congress to declare war on Al-Qaeda? So, I mean, there needed to be, I don't agree this is what we needed, but I thought there needed to be something in place for what's
called asymmetrical warfare, where it's state actors going against non-state
exactly.
actors.
But especially when we get into the weird stuff going on in the Middle East, where you have non-state actors basically, an Iranian general was killed in Iraq for leading Iraqi revolutionary. You know what I mean? At a certain point, it gets so muddy of non-state and state actors where it's like, where does the lines actually end here? Are these protesters storming an embassy, or are these rebels trained by a foreign government's highest-ranking military official storming an embassy? It gets crazy. So I do want to get into that because I agree about something big time in this, and this is the he gets in here. So Andrew Yang became the fourth president. This is old news, happened back in May. But this is something I do think is interesting. So the End the Forever War pledge calls for bringing the global war on terror and the U.S. involvement in conflicts in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and elsewhere to an expedient conclusion. We've continued in a constant state of war for the last 17 years, and it's cost us tremendously in American lives as well as billions of dollars that could have been used to help families at home, Yang said in his statement. It is ridiculous. I mean, the biggest thing this showed me is, let's say hypothetically there is a war with Iran. There will be people fighting in that war who were not alive when it started. Isn't that crazy? And this isn't the 100 years of war between France and England. This is America's retaliation for 9/11 18 years ago. It's just crazy to me. That is how long it's been going on for. It really is. And I think someone said it. Someone wrote a tweet. I think they were not joking as much as I took it as a joke, but they said George Bush finally got his wish. He normalized war so much, just nobody cares that we never left. And I think it's funny they said George Bush because it's this. Remember, George, well, they were saying George Sr. started the war in Iraq. I mean, this has been going on in the U.S. government across multiple administrations, across multiple different houses, multiple different senates for like 20 years now. There was a full Obama ran in the way of getting us out of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Didn't Trump run in 2016 of getting us out of Afghanistan? Like it's almost like they do it just so you can always run on it.
Look, I know this raises your heart rate, so I'll keep it short. The only thing I will say is that whenever Democrats criticize a drone strike, it really bothers me because every 20 minutes for 8 years we had them under Obama, and these people said nothing.
But that's like the media. Like I wouldn't even call them Democrats. They're just like just state shills who just parrot the state.
And we've listened to all the reports from Pompeo. We've listened to all the reports from the intelligence community that there was direct evidence that was going to stop an imminent attack. And don't forget that Barack Obama had actually sanctioned directly this Soleimani guy for planning a Washington, D.C. attack back in the Obama administration.
I don't want to get too far into
So it was a bad dude. He had to go. And this idea that we're trying to escalate a war with Iran just really bothers me because people act like, believe it or not, guys, we have to act defensively sometimes.
Or proactively.
Yes. Believe it or not, in our defense, we have to be proactive sometimes and know who's trying to attack us, why they're trying to attack us, what their motivations and their relationships are. That's why we have the intelligence community.
But the thing is, like I said, I think the more interesting discussion here is this is why are we blowing up Iranian generals in Iraq, man? Because 18 years ago, somebody, for whatever reason, Osama bin Laden, I guess, I don't know. Somebody ordered a plane attack against America 18 years ago. And for this, the thing is, like, you could think this, there's justification, sure, for individual, this guy was planning further attacks, so he must have been stopped. Like, cool. Why are we still in Iraq, though? Like, it doesn't answer why are we still blowing up Iranians in the Middle East? It doesn't answer one of those questions. The problem is, the reason I want to get into what Andrew was talking about here, like you said, you can agree or disagree on if this will lead to war, if it won't lead to war. But I want to get into the idea of, like, we probably shouldn't still be in the Middle East blowing people up because we've been doing that forever and it's not accomplishing anything. And you know what? Maybe we could start talking about removing a clause that lets the president blow up terrorists anywhere in the globe because of 9/11. At a certain point, because of 9/11, just stops being an excuse for things.
Hey, if they want to get rid of the Patriot Act, like, I'd be fine with getting rid of the Patriot Act.
Well, no,
okay.
The government won't give up the Patriot Act.
Of course not.
Because do you know? Because again, I'm going to get into the political mumbo jumbo. Not the political, but right now, Democrats control the House, so you're going to see a lot of Democrats saying only the House can declare war because that's where that is where the concentration of power for the Democratic establishment is. Yeah. If the Democrats controlled the Senate, they'd be saying, well, maybe the Senate should be, you know what I mean? Like, it's no offense, same thing with the Republicans. Right now, the Republicans are in the executive branch, so the Republicans are going to insert that the executive branch can declare war because that's where the Republicans have their power. They're in the Senate. So it's just going to be baloney political bickering. But this idea that maybe we need to stop saying because 9/11 and then using that and then just
because 9/11 thing has to go.
Well, because it's just we need to eventually move on as a country. It was an awful thing, but if someone had to pay in blood for 9/11, it has been paid and some over. I mean, like, we have so many people have died in the Middle East as a result of this that I think Americans are starting to get to the point now, because 9/11.
Well, you also have entire generations of voting age adults that don't even remember the trauma of 9/11.
But yeah, that's
it's like when Republicans want to quote the glory days of Reagan. It's like, I'm sorry, I remember watching him 2 or 3 times on TV as a 3-year-old.
But that isn't it? You know, it is a little bit. I want to hear your opinion on this. It is a little bit difficult though, because like 9/11 was one of the most traumatic things that's happened to this country in like forever. So not forever, but for a very long time. So it makes sense, but it is getting crazy because at a certain point, it's like legitimately the reason why the president's able to do these things is because after 9/11, we had to put something in place to let us quickly respond.
Yeah.
But it was 20 years ago now. I mean, it's not now, but it's coming up in 20
everybody,
years.
Everybody in the United States of America, except for maybe some wackos on the left, I had to put that zinger in there. Everybody agrees that there has to be emergency powers granted to people that we have voted for, that we trust. And that's actually why the political division is so destructive, because we no longer have trust in our leaders to make the ultimate decision that the president is really kind of supposed to be one of his only responsibilities, being frickin' commander in chief. You know what I'm saying?
The top one, the head of the executive branch.
Yeah, you're head of the executive branch. You are the commander of chief. You're the one that chooses whether or not we do indeed go to war or not for those 90 days. It used to be that the president could only declare war for up to 90 days, and it was while Congress wasn't in session, because that was a power that was reserved for Congress. Every single conflict since, I believe, the Korean War has been a president going to war and then Congress not exercising its duty. So first off, this isn't a presidential problem, it's a congressional problem. And my only beef with Andrew Yang's tweet is that, yes, he brings up some good points about the AUMF. And I do agree with him on that. In fact, I would go even further, and this is where my Republican friends might bristle. I would go further to say the Patriot Act is flawed and largely unconstitutional, and that needs to be gotten rid of and redrawn. So I like that. But when you cannot at all look at your own party and realize the grave mistakes that they have made and the contributions that they have made towards this debacle that we have in the Middle East and this hemorrhaging of our own blood and treasure, then it makes it more difficult for me to trust you. You know what I'm saying? And if there is anything that a presidential candidate needs to be completely bipartisan in, where it's like, okay, we are literally all in this together, it is military conflict. Because when the crap hits the fan and we all got to grab an AR-15 and go fight a land invasion from China, or we have to go fight that final epic war to end all wars against Russia or whatever, okay, then we literally aren't Democrat or Republican troops, we're American troops, okay? Now, I get he's running for a primary, okay, and I get that maybe he ain't up on things internationally. And maybe as a Democrat, you can't look too bipartisan or they won't like you or whatever. But that tweet just seemed like pandering and really bugged me. And I don't like it when I see Andrew Yang pivoting to anti-Trumpism, because a lot of people bristle at that and say, hey, if you're going against my guy, you're going against me. And that's just psychologically proven, okay? I actually like to see him pivot towards ideas of lowering the temperature in the Middle East. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's the discussion that doesn't get had enough, where people just say, "Oh, pull the troops out." It's like, okay, but like, how are we gonna figure out the way to resolve the last 20 years? Like, I don't think when the troops aren't there anymore, it's been resolved. Like, how do we resolve it?
We've literally spent 2 decades whirring drones in the air, telling anybody that goes against us, you and most likely people you love that are sitting next to you are going to die in a drone strike that you don't even hear coming. And by the way, it's going to be at a wedding.
Well, do you want to hear something,
like your happiest day on earth?
Not funny, but something interesting here is that there actually has been a lot of research, which is I don't want to get too far into it. But one of my hobbies is I like to look into military psychology, and just one of the things, generally speaking, about war, you don't really. It's the goal is never to kill everybody. It's just to get them to do the thing you want them to do. However, over the last 30, 40 years, just Americans and there was this obsession with weapons that were efficient at killing, because they found, I think it was like World War II and Vietnam. Like in World War II or World War I think it was, they'd have to drop like a ton of ordnance to kill one person, just because that was inefficient. So efficiency got anyway. It's just been creating animosity. This idea that the Americans, maybe you'll see a few of them here and there in your country, but it's just these remote control planes that are causing this destruction. And there's this sense of like the people on the ground reporting. It's like the reason why it's gotten so bad over there is just there's very like dishonorable, it doesn't feel
it's
like
like habeas corpus. It's like, show me mine accuser.
Well, exactly.
It's almost like I want to be able to fight him. I want to see the color of his eyes with a bayonet in my hand.
That's what I'm trying to get to. Yeah, it's because America's presence is so weird and nebulous and mostly just in the form of targeted strikes or whatever. It just creates more animosity than anything because they can't even take their anger.
Well, it's just like our soldiers in Vietnam had such psychosis when they would get battle fatigue, because in Vietnam there's bushes everywhere. You don't know where the bad guys are, and they're these reclusive snipers that are hiding out and hanging out. Like, our drones were the Vietnamese snipers of Vietnam. It created this, like, if you study the war psychology, one of the reasons why it was so mentally stressful for soldiers in Vietnam is because you literally had an omnipresent threat whenever you were outside, and you didn't know if in this side there was some snipers or if in that side there were some snipers. So I get that. And you got to get into war as fast as you can if it's necessary, but also out of it as fast as you can. And we haven't. In my adult life, we've always been at war. So I agree with that with Andrew Yang. But just like he's constantly pivoting to the freedom dividend in domestic affairs, like, hey, what do you think about the urban housing district? Well, we have too many urban housing programs, and you want to know what, they'd go away if everybody had $1,000 a month. He's constantly able to pivot to the freedom dividend in domestic affairs. Why doesn't he pivot towards peace and settling things down in foreign affairs? If he could do that instead of going after this, anti-Trump thing, whenever he goes into the anti-Trump thing, he loses me, and he loses a lot of other people like me that are supporters willing enough to podcast about him. So I really think that as a game plan going forward, pivoting to the freedom dividend on domestic affairs is really good. It gets people interested in him, gets people interested in UBI. And then pivoting towards peace and ending conflict instead of anti-administration rhetoric, I think would be a far better move that wouldn't smell like pandering, at least to people like me.
I like how you finished it with that. No offense, but not appearing as pandering to Cardinellis, I do not think is the way you win the presidency.
Is that a really high bar?
Yeah, because like I said, like I always say, sometimes with you, it's like I don't even have to ask you. It's like you think it's pandering, right? I do agree, just because Andrew Yang should take a little more of his own advice when he's talking. When anyone's talking about, it's okay. This is the last thing I'll get into this. I don't like a classic tactic of old school wrestling stuff. Not old school, but what they would do is what I'm saying is what you would do is you would have whoever your main wrestler you want to put over is the big guy on top. Everybody talks about him all the time. People who aren't wrestling against him, people who've never wrestled against him, everybody's only talking about this one guy, Hulk Hogan, who is the top guy. And a lot of it's because of political machinations backstage. But the idea is the reason why you do that, it psychologically puts in your head, that's the guy. He or guy or girl, right? He's the one everyone talks about. Yeah. Whether they're directly competing with him, whether they're indirectly competing with him, whether they aspire to one day potentially compete against him, he's on everyone's mind. He's the focus. He's the one. I mean, it's literally what's going on. Like, because I will agree. Well, some light criticism there. I really do wish Andrew Yang just kind of had finished up his tweet by saying, hey, there's some bad stuff. Like, we need to have a better way for not just being continually in a state of war in the Middle East. He didn't need to get into the Trump stuff, because here's the thing. If your pitch is good enough, it doesn't matter who you're getting out of the White House, because I'm getting you in. I do think it's a little bit of an aside, but they need to stop. People have to stop putting over Donald Trump. I know you're saying bad things about him, but when everything is about Trump, when people frame it as Trump is actually the center of the universe, forget Earth, forget the sun. No, Donald Trump is the center of the universe. Like, that's what the media talks about him. And so I do agree. I think Andrew Yang would be better off just standing on his own shoulders and just saying, that's why I need to get in the White House. Forget who's in there now.
Yeah. Now, I like the education about the AUMF and all that other stuff, but I wholly agree, and that's an excellent example. Let us know what you guys think. Are we putting Donald Trump over again in 2020? Yes. And that's actually probably the best example I've heard, Cody, of explaining why so much negative coverage of him is actually not beneficial to the left, but beneficial to Donald Trump himself, because it's just like you're putting over who the pre-programmed champion in wrestling is going to be. Yeah. Anyway, Let us know what you guys think. Comment below, please, if you can. Make sure pretty soon, if you guys want to contribute to the channel, you're going to be able to join. We're going to have some memberships coming where there's going to be a members-only stream and also exclusive members-only content. So keep your eyes open for that. That'll be coming out this week. If you guys want to, make sure you leave us a voicemail at 1-833-PSP Radio and follow us on Twitter at PSP Radio 1. This is Problem Solver Politics. We'll see you guys in the next video.